what's going on? I didn't know you'd come back. But if you are here, that means one of two things. You either A, love me, love my face, think I'm beautiful, so you tuned in, or you love basketball, which is also another great reason. I don't fault you. But if you're that side of the spectrum, like I am, the people who love basketball, then you're going to love this. Because if there's one thing I love most about basketball, is telling you who I think is up next, which is exactly what this video is about to be about. So I can't wait to share with you who I think is the NBA's next star. Yeah, you probably already know who the person I'm going to talk about is, considering it's in the title. If you read the title, but if you did, you know I think Jordan Poole is up next. So in this video, I'm going to give you a super simple statistical breakdown on why I think Jordan Poole has the opportunity with the Washington Wizards to break into that NBA All-Star tier. There's no reason that he can't, situationally and statistically, and I'm about to show you why. So tune in and let's do it. Quick disclaimer on this video, I know that the analysis I ran and what I did it can be applied to most players, but why don't we put on our actual, let's be intelligent for a second, let's really think about basketball and realize that every NBA player has the opportunity to go out and score 40. They're all in the league to be in the league, they all have the skill set, they all have the move set, they could all do it. But we know the NBA doesn't run that way, or else you'd hand the keys of your organization over to Cam Thomas. No diss to Cam Thomas, he's unbelievable. But the Nets don't do that for a reason. So, yes, this method can be applied to pretty much everybody. But, unlike Cam Thomas, Jordan Poole actually has the opportunity to do so. So, let's keep that in mind while we do this. Let's actually be smart here, because we know better than that. If you're watching this, you know better than that. So, I know throughout the video, you're going to be like, oh, well, can't you say this for... No. Alright, so in order to run this analysis, there are 3 steps that we need to take care of first. Step number 1, which I'll put a list right here. Step number 1 is finding a season that most closely resembles what Jordan Poole's upcoming season can look like, based upon opportunity, shot attempts, situation, etc. I found a season that I think best represents that, and that's going to be Bradley Beal's 2020 to 2021 season. So throughout this analysis, know that any predictive analytics are done using that season for Brad. Number 2, which once again should be up here, is understanding the breakdown of opportunities statistically between Bradley Beal on the Wizards that season and Jordan Poole on the Warriors this past season. Understanding the difference between these two and the statistical breakdown between those two will allow us to draw parallels between Jordan's new opportunities and Beal's prior opportunities. That'll help us predict what Jordan Poole's outlook will look like moving into that season. That'll take into consideration some of Jordan's averages, Brad's averages, and averages from both the Warriors this past season and the Wizards in the 2020-2021 season. The third and arguably most important step is using the data that we've gathered in order to run predictive analysis. So I'll go ahead now and tell you I used a rolling average to help predict Jordan Poole's future shooting splits, and I also just used simple means in order to draw comparisons between the Warriors and the Wizards. So it's not a super in-depth analysis, nothing that I don't think the average person can't follow, but just know that some predictive analytics were used in order to find out how Jordan's going to play. Comparison season is important because we need to find a season that most resembles what Jordan's upcoming season is going to look like. And on the right, you can see that that comparison season is Bradley Beal's 2020 to 2021 campaign with the Washington Wizards, ironically enough. But the 5 criteria that you see on the left are done by myself. I think that these are the 5 that are most important when finding that comparison season. Jordan Poole will be that primary scorer. There should be between 2 to 4 players that average about 15 or higher. He's going to be responsible for about a quarter of the shots, probably more to be honest, and that encompasses 2-point field goal attempts, 3-point field goal attempts, and free throw attempts. As for position, you don't want to have a small forward, power forward, or center be the player's season that we look at, because based on position, you see different types of shot attempts. That in terms of 2s, 3s, efficiency, the amount of times you'll get to the line, etc. And also, I took the stats from Jordan's season last year, and it would be completely unreasonable to pick a season where the team doesn't have similar pace field goals and turnovers, because then the numbers would be inflated or deflated based on the team that I compared them to. So, if we look on the right now, Bradley Beal is the number 1 option. He was the number 1 scorer on that team, which is what I think will happen with Jordan this season. For players that were above that like mid to high teened. You had Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, Thomas Bryant, and Rui Hachimura, which is that 2 to 4 players that I was looking for. Based on analysis and breakdown that I found on Basketball Reference, which you can go look up yourself, Beal was responsible for 25.3% of the Wizards' total field goal attempts per game, and also responsible for about 30% of the free throw attempts. Beal also plays a similar position, sometimes playing the 1, majority playing the 2, and I think Jordan will flip-flop between those two, so I think it's a fair position comparison. And after looking at both the 2023 Warriors and the 2020-2021 Wizards, the pace was within 2.5%, field goal attempts were within 0.38%, and we only had about a 1.5 turnover difference, which I deemed appropriate and within reason to conduct this analysis. Opportunity breakdown is important, not because it's like, oh my God, look at Brad's numbers compared to Jordan's. No, any player that gets more usage typically will have higher stats. The idea here is to look at those bottom 2 lines, that percent of total free throws and percent of total field goals. That's the most important part of this. The rest is just for you to see an overall breakdown. But when we look at those total field goals and total free throws, what we'll see is that Jordan really doesn't even come remotely close in terms of attempts that Brad is getting. That 4% difference in free throw attempts may be about 1 trip to the line typically, because if we're looking at free throw attempt output, Jordan was taking about 5.1 and Brad was taking 7.7. So that could really just be a 1 trip difference, but we'll have to see how Jordan plays. If he attacks the hole a lot this year, that may go up. But if you look at total field goal attempts, Brad is taking 8% more shots. And if you take 8% more shots over the course of a game, where a team typically puts up 85-ish attempts, that could lead to a lot more shot attempts for Jordan. And based on his numbers, which we can see, the only 2 green numbers for Jordan are his 3-point attempts, because half of his shots on the Warriors were 3s. If he even comes remotely close to doing that, that 8% increase in shots could be 3s, which, as we know, 3s are greater than 2s. And in turn, he may get to the line less, but the odds are that he's making and taking more 3s. We're finally here where we get to look at Jordan's Poole future scoring predictions for next season, which I'm sure it was the first thing your eyes were drawn to in that bottom right corner. That is okay, because we're still going to go over how we got there anyway. So, let's go over that little disclaimer in the top left corner about the rolling average. The rolling average is what I use to help predict Jordan's shooting splits and his scoring splits, and the reason why I had to use a rolling average is because of how few seasons Jordan has played. What a rolling average does is that it helps to take into consideration the fact that there's so much volatility in numbers, and it provides more of an accurate reflection of prediction more than an in-the-moment spur prediction. With someone like Jordan Poole, who hasn't played more than 5 seasons in the league, any type of rapid improvement is going to jump the numbers more than they should. And as we know, Jordan Poole has shown incredibly drastic improvement year over year since he's been in the league. So a rolling average helped to minimize the effect of that to have a more accurate reflection instead of an in-the-moment reflection. Jumping down to Jordan's shooting tendencies, you'll see that I have Jordan taking about an estimated 26% of available shots. The way I had that number calculated was I went back, looked at Brad's usage, looked at Brad's teammates, looked at their numbers, looked at Jordan's teammates, looked at their possible numbers, and it comes out that Jordan will be taking about 26% of those shots, which, if you look in the top right, those numbers are also closely related, being average pace, average turnovers, and possible field goal attempts. So the numbers in the top right have to do with 2023 Warriors and 2020 Wizards. The average pace of those teams, which for those that don't know, that's just the number of possessions per game, was about 103, where both teams also averaged about 15 turnovers a game, which if you subtract total possessions from total numbers of turnovers, the only other thing that they can be doing is attacking the basket, which leads them to have about 87.5 field goal attempts on a given night. Some of those could also be trips to the line depending on fouls, but we're just going to look at them as total possible field goal attempts. Moving back down to his shooting tendencies, you'll see that 26% of those possible field goal attempts is 22.7, so about 23 shots on a given night. Percent of 2-point field goals, percent of 3-point field goals were predicted using rolling averages based on Jordan's earlier seasons. So we're looking at him to shoot 48% of 2s, 52% of 3s, and about 25.25% of the team's total free throws. which if we do some simple math there, Jordan's looking to take about 11 twos and 12 threes with about 5 free throws. Next thing to look at that's really important is how well is he going to perform when taking those shots, which once again, we applied the rolling average. So Jordan Poole should shoot about 54% on his 2-pointers and 35% on his 3-pointers and 87% on his free throws. Moving over again, more simple math here we're looking at. So if he's shooting about 54% on 2s on 10.8 attempts, he'll be getting about 11.6 points from 2-pointers. Same thing for 3, shooting 35% on about 12 attempts is 12.49 points, and then an estimated 4.43 points off of free throws, which leads us to our grand total of 28.59 points for Jordan Poole this upcoming season. First thing to get out of the way. Will Jordan Poole score exactly 28.59 points per game? No, probably not. If he does, I might be the greatest statistician that's ever walked this planet. Could he be somewhere close? Yes. Could he be somewhere way off? Absolutely. But based on the opportunity that I think Jordan has this season, mixed with how I think he'll perform, I think that around this 28-29 number is where we'll find Jordan, which I think puts him in the elite group of scorers in the NBA, because as we know, there were only a handful of players last year that even touched that 30-plus mark. Granted, that was the most in recent history, but we have Jordan Poole right at the cusp of that elite group of scorers, and I don't see how he's in a position where he can't do that. If you're still watching and you're still listening, I just want to say thank you for making it to this part of the video. Thank you for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, or if you just enjoyed listening to me, be sure to like the video, be sure to sub, comment, say I have no idea what I'm talking about, say this was stupid, say it was great, say you agree, say you disagree, say anything. I just want to see some comments. Say whatever. So, once again, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. It's been your boy Sweezy30, and I'm out.